Now, there are 4 levels when it comes to business. Number 1 is starting the business. Number 2 is growing the business. Number 3 is sustaining the business. Number 4 is transferring the business. Those are 4 things, but you need to be ready to do what needs to be done at these 4 levels. So number 1, starting a business. Businesses don't start themselves. People start businesses. So if you're going to start a business, you must be willing to take responsibility to birth that business. A lot of people have the capacity to start a business. They have the competence to start a business. They have the desire to start a business, but they don't have the courage to start it. And until you start, you have not started. So many people want to start, but fear of the unknown, fear of uncertainty, fear of the future makes them not to start. But you need to understand that until you start, you have not started. We've said and we've heard over and over again that the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a step. But guess what? The journey of 1,000 miles does not just begin with a step. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a step that is taken. So until you take that step, the journey has not begun, because if wishes were horses, beggars will ride. 1,000 good intentions are not as powerful as one action. So I plan to, I hope to, I intend to. It doesn't matter until you actually give action to your intention. So starting a business is the first step in the 4 levels. Number 2 is growing the business. Once you start a business, you then need to grow the business. You need to ensure that this business that you have started does not remain the way it was started. That means that in order to grow the business, you have to grow. Because you have to grow for everything around you to grow. You cannot give what you don't have. So once you start a business, you have to be committed to ensuring that you do what needs to be done to become the kind of person that can grow that business. Then you execute that thing that needs to be executed to grow. 3rd level is sustaining. So there are people that are having problems starting the business. And there are people that have already started, but after they have started, their problem is how to grow. But there are people that are actually growing. The business is growing, but their problem now is sustainability. They've started the business is growing, and sometimes they don't understand. Well, this thing is growing, customers are coming, we might need to do this, we might need to do that. So they are confused. How do I sustain this thing for the next 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years? How do I sustain it? So their problem is sustainability. How do I sustain the business to ensure that this growing business is sustained for decades, even until I've gone? Because when you study the marketplace, you realize that over 80% of businesses fail in the first 5 years. And when you start a business, you find out that the life cycle of that business is 5 years, 80% of the time. But the businesses that survive the first 5 years, over 80% of them fail within the next 5 years again. So until you have actually done business for 10 years and above, you are not in business. You are still experimenting. Until you have been able to survive the politics, the policies, and the peculiarities of your environment for a decade and above, then you can say, okay, I'm in business. So you need to understand that in order for you to be all that you need to be, you need to know how to navigate all these different levels. Starting it, growing it, sustaining it. The 4th level, which is also a challenge for a lot of people, because I don't know all the different set of people that will be listening to us, so I need to throw all this out there, but they are all in the book. You can then get the book to go further. Is transferring the business. Listen and listen well. The God that we serve is a generational God. See, I'm the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. God thinks in generation. A good man leaves an inheritance for his children's children. Everything that God does, he does with generations in mind. God does not start something that he expects to stop now. He wants it to go from one generation to the other. So many times when it comes to business, transferring business to the next generation becomes a challenge for a lot of people. So you find out that in our country and even in the continent, we have very few businesses that have survived 100 years. We have very few businesses that have survived 50 years. We have very few businesses that have survived the founder. Why? Because a man finds a business and starts a business, and then he grows the business, and you find out that when the man dies, the business dies. And then you see all kinds of court cases. Brothers are fighting brothers. People are doing all kinds of stuff. Now, what causes this is because they don't have what I call transgenerational desires and plan. Because in order for you to build a business that you can transfer to the next generation, in order for you to build a transgenerational business, number one, you must have a transgenerational mindset. Number two, you must have a transgenerational plan. So your mindset must be transgenerational. I've done a lot of research in business, and we have different modules and trainings that we do around this line. And I've come to realize that most of the time, when it comes to business, the first generation is always a generating generation. They are pioneers. They pioneer things. They generate things. But the problem then happens as they are pioneering and generating things, they are giving birth to children. And these children are now being born to parents that are struggling to come out of poverty. So these ones that are coming after, they've seen their parents struggle, and they've seen that their parents are beginning to come out of poverty. And then the parents now have a mindset, I don't want my children to suffer what I've suffered. And because they don't want their children to suffer what they've suffered, they now say, okay, go to private school, go to school, go and study education, go and study this. So they begin to push the children into different levels of life in order to give the children a better life. What now happens is that these children, second generation now, that are born to the pioneering parents, now come up with a maintenance mindset. So most of the time, the second generation becomes a maintenance generation. They now say, what daddy and mommy has done, we need to maintain it. We need to make sure that what daddy and mommy has done is not destroyed. But you see, maintenance mindset cannot build a transgenerational business. Survivor mindset cannot build a transgenerational business. So when this second generation comes, they are just thinking maintenance. But you know what happens? By the time the third generation comes, the third generation does not even know what poverty is. The third generation is probably born abroad with a foreign passport. The third generation probably grows up with drivers and cooks and gatesmen. The third generation grow up seeing everything looking good. They did not know that grandpa started with poverty. There are people that when you tell them, I remember one of my friends, when they went for the burial of his own father, he went with his son. And when they went to Bomosho, he was telling the son, he said, that, in those days, when I was growing up here, that we used to trek from this place to this place. You know what the son told me? He said, you mean grandpa made you to do that? That is wickedness. That is wicked. How can he make you to walk like that? You see, he calls wickedness what their fathers lived, because he has never had to trek before. Now today we have children that don't even know the name of the bus stop next to our house. We have children that cannot go anywhere on their own. Now, so we have sent them all over the world, and now they have all kinds of book smart, but they are not street smart. So you find out that the first generation is a generating generation. The second generation is a maintenance generation. By the time you get to the third generation, it's an entitlement generation. They now feel they are entitled to everything. And at the end of the day, what the first generation starts dies in the third generation. The third generation now becomes a beggar once again. Many of you probably know people that are very rich in this area. They used to be very rich, but today their grandchildren are poor, selling all the property to smoke, selling the property to do runs, selling the property to carry women. But their grandfather had lands and houses and all kinds of stuff. I remember many years ago, I came in here to do a Wisdom for Singles conference. And we held the conference in one massive estate here. Massive estate. And everywhere was dilapidated. And as a real estate person, when I came in, I said, wow, who has it? I said, the man don't die since. I said, so what's happening to all this real estate? That's what's happening. There are many people today that have businesses. Their children are in Canada. Their children are all over the world. And they are not ready to come back to run the business. Because you have raised another generation that does not want to do what the first generation did. Think about it. Many of you growing up, you were frying akara, frying yam, frying beans, cooking beans by the side of the road. This is what you did to raise your children. Guess what? The children you raised now graduated. Instead of them to now use the education to come back and take your akara to eatery level and take your corn to eatery level, they will now leave that one and say, I can't do that. That's beneath me. They will now go and get a job in an air-conditioned coffin that they call corporate office. At the end of the day, poverty is perpetuated. Why? Because we don't understand how to transfer things from one generation to the other. So you need to realize that as a man or a woman, everything rises and falls on leadership. So once you understand these basics that I'm talking to you about, then you need to do some specific things that will now help you to navigate these 4 seasons. So I want to share with you, because of time,